that we have about 30,000 Jewish followers of Jesus in this country, and we're all allowed to practice it, our faith, and we can talk about it, and we can try to persuade people, hey, Jesus is the Messiah, Yeshua is the Messiah, you should follow him, and here's why. That's legal. It's not culturally welcome by many, but it's allowed because we're a democracy.
What's going on in Israel? Israel's in a very serious crisis right now. Welcome to Inside the Epicenter with Joel Rosenberg, a podcast of the Joshua Fund, a ministry dedicated to blessing Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus. I'm Carl Moeller, Executive Director of the Joshua Fund, and today we're talking with Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem. Joel, welcome to the podcast in the serious tone that we've started this, but this is really a moment of crisis for Israel, is it not? So,
just like we read in the New Testament, in the Gospels, that a storm can come up so suddenly on the Sea of Galilee that even these veteran, trained, experienced sailors and fishermen get terrified that they're going to lose their lives. Like, a storm can erupt very, very quickly here in Israel. Now, for those who have been tracking with what we're talking about on All Israel News, all the reporting, this is a story that's been in process for months. Really since around January, late December. And we've been tracking the story as we go. On the Rosenberg report, too, you and I have not dealt with it so far on the Inside the Epicenter podcast because it hadn't reached sort of a crisis level. And this is not a news podcast. It's not really about the TikTok of what's happening, in a day-by-day thing. We're talking about major themes and major issues. But this has become a major story, and we absolutely have to deal with it. So Let me try to break it down in pieces, and then you can keep asking me to fill in where you think the audience needs more information.
Yeah.
The short version is that last week, as we record this, All Israel News broke a very important story that two ultra-Orthodox members of the Knesset, our parliament here in Israel, introduced a bill to outlaw all sharing of the gospel. You couldn't even talk about the gospel. You couldn't ask somebody about the gospel. You couldn't answer their questions, even if they brought it up, or you would go to prison for at least a year.
Crazy. Okay?
Yes. This was a horrifying attack on human rights, civil rights, religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience. We discovered that this bill had been introduced. All Israel News reported it. And the story went viral. It got picked up quickly by many other Christian media outlets in the United States and elsewhere around the world. And then Israeli media began picking it up from us. And there was such a deluge of curiosity and concern and fear that poured in to the Israeli government, particularly in the foreign ministry, that an issue that wasn't even on the radar screen of the foreign minister suddenly became a crisis. He called the prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said, we got a crisis. And by 4:43 Wednesday afternoon, Netanyahu put out a statement saying, we will never allow a law to pass that will harm the Christian communities. So this was good, and it happened very rapidly. But it happened in the context of a larger crisis that's been building.
Before we get into the larger crisis, I want to ask, a couple clarifying questions on the issue of the anti-evangelism perspective, because we know that it's always been difficult to talk about Yeshua and the Messiah in Israel, that it's always been among the ultra-Orthodox and the ultra-religious a very sensitive subject, especially when it comes to certain populations within Israel. But Israel is a nation of laws and democracy, and it's had a tradition of religious freedom. I mean, Muslims practice freely in Israel. I mean, it's not It shouldn't be Hindus. Anybody, atheists can live in. You could be a good Jew and be an atheist. It's just one of those things. What now? I mean, is this ultra-Orthodox party that introduces these kinds of things? Are they gaining power and more influence in Israel? Is this part of the problem here?
It exactly part of the problem, and you're right. Israel is to be commended. We are a true Jewish state. But we're also a democracy, meaning you don't have to be Jewish or you don't have to practice Judaism the way the ultra-Orthodox rabbis say you should, right? And as you said, we know that if you're Jewish and you're an atheist, you're sort of missing the point. Or if you're Jewish and you're a Hindu, you're sort of missing the point of the God of Israel saying, I love you and I want to do something special in you and through you. but it's still not illegal to practice no faith or other faiths, including following Jesus. So we have about 30,000 Jewish followers of Jesus in this country, and we're all allowed to practice our faith, and we can talk about it, and we can try to persuade people, hey, Jesus is the Messiah, Yeshua is the Messiah, you should follow him, and here's why. That's legal. It's not culturally welcome by many, but it's allowed because we're a democracy, and we believe in the rule of law. Okay, and that Israel is a signer of, I think it was the 1949 UN Convention on Human Rights, which I'm not a big fan of the UN, but they did do something right when they got countries to sign this Convention on Human Rights, because one of those is you can believe whatever you want religiously. You can change your religion if you feel like you want to. That's a basic fundamental human right. Amen. And Israel's a signatory to this. So this law would have been a huge disaster. It would have sparked horror among 600 million evangelicals worldwide. It would have caused many people to not want to come visit here, not want to invest here, not want to do business here. And even though we're supposed to love and support Israel unconditionally, it would have rattled many, many people going, wait a minute, if you're going to deny the fundamental human rights, religious freedom of Israeli Christians, even if you don't, or Messianic Jews, even if you don't like it, that's a huge problem for us. And it would have caused a huge disaster. Netanyahu has been the most friendly to Christians worldwide. He sees us not just as the best friends of Israel, as he says in many, many speeches and interviews, but he also sees Christians, generally evangelicals in particular, as a strategic ally of Israel. And this particular author of the bill has been introducing this bill since 1999. Okay. Yeah. He's not kidding about this bill. He wants to silence followers of Jesus. Now you say, okay, so why did you huff and puff and get all nervous about it today? What makes this night different from all other nights, since we're coming up on Passover? So I would say this. The reason it's different is because this particular author and his colleague, the co-author, are part of a party called the United Torah Judaism Party, and they have 7 seats in the current government. This current government, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's very pro-Christian, wonderful, not a Christian himself, doesn't believe in Jesus the way you and I do, but respects Christianity. Mm-hmm. He has 64 seats out of 120 seats in his government. So a party of 7 seats, it's not a lot, but it does make the difference between whether Netanyahu remains prime minister or not. Yeah. So if this party had made this an absolute bedrock, we will not support you unless you let this bill pass, even if you don't vote for it, they could have brought down the Netanyahu government, which would have many implications. We're not partisans at the Joshua Fund. We're not saying, we're a non-profit, non-partisan organization. We don't say Bibi should be the prime minister or he shouldn't be. But my point is, that's how he sees it. He saw it as a threat to him. But yes, it's not just that party. Much of the Netanyahu government is ultra-Orthodox or a very aggressive form of Orthodox, nationalistic Orthodox, that are pushing Bibi Netanyahu to pass much more legislation that would impose what Jews call halakhic law, or halakha, which is sort of rabbinic Jewish way of thinking and doing the world, doing life. They want to impose that on the rest of society. Wow. Yeah. I don't want to take this too far, but it's like the Jewish form of Sharia law in Islam, meaning most Israelis don't want to be under the rabbi's thumb. Sure. They're willing to give the rabbis freedom to, if you want to live that way, that's fine, right? But that's not us. Most people are rejecting ultra-Orthodox Judaism. So this is a tension, and it leads to this next point. And I'll say it quickly, and then you can pull on the thread as you see best. Yeah. So there's a judicial reform legislative package moving through the parliament, the Knesset right now, that Netanyahu is supporting. He wants it to pass. We can get into the nuances, but the point is the system here, the legal system is broken down, and most Israelis believe their changes are needed because the Supreme Court keeps striking down laws that the people want. And they're like, wait a minute, there's no way to fix that. The prime minister doesn't get to appoint the Supreme Court justices like the president of the United States appoints them. Now they have to clear the Senate, but at least if you elect your guy, he gets to appoint people that agree with his view of the law.
Right.
We don't have that here. Now, the Supreme Court has been a wonderful institution in defending the rights of minorities, like followers of Jesus and Arabs and Muslims and others. But this reform package is mostly agreed on, except for one major provision. The key provision is that there's an override clause. What does that mean? Meaning the legislature, the parliament, if they don't like a decision by the Supreme Court, or they think it's literally unfair or unjust for whatever set of reasons, they could pass the law again and override the Supreme Court with only a simple majority, meaning in 120-seat Knesset, you would only need 61 seats. Now, why is that dangerous? It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's the end of democracy. Why do I say that? Because if the Supreme Court can be shot down with a simple majority, then there is no Supreme Court, because the government of Israel, by definition, has a majority. That's how they get to be the government. They have a majority. So, meaning the Supreme Court would never be a check. It would never be a balance. It would never be a break on a majority saying, this is just the way we want it, and we don't care that it tramples on your religious freedoms, human rights, whatever. That is dangerous. Now, if you said, well, it could be a supermajority of like 90 out of 120 seats, that would be 75%. You might say, well, then yes, if you can get 75% of the Knesset to vote to override, then that seems fair. That's the national consensus. Or even 80 seats would be a 2/3 majority. And that's the American standard. If you want to overturn a Supreme Court decision in America, you can do it. But you either have to change the people who are on the court, or you have to get 2/3 vote of the House and 2/3 vote of the Senate. And then I forget if it's 2/3 or 3/4 of the states. All that to say, this is the key point. Let's say that passed. Let's say the judicial reform package in its current format really passed. And then let's say this ultra-Orthodox group party was able to get the bill passed that would ban the sharing of the gospel. Now, the Supreme Court would definitely strike that down because it goes against even the Declaration of Independence of Israel, which enshrines our religious freedoms.
Right.
However, then 61 members of the Knesset could shoot that down and override it, and that's it. I would go to prison for a year. I don't know if I could do my podcast with you, from prison, but
I laugh,
everybody I know in the believing community would be in prison, and we would have no recourse. Okay? Now, that's just how it affects us as believers. Now, take that and extrapolate that across the entire country. And people, even those who agree with Bibi Netanyahu and his team, we definitely need changes. They're scared of that provision because they realize that could happen to any of us, anything that we believe in or care for. If the majority, especially the ultra-Orthodox majority, decides, no, we're going to impose our view on you, that's it. And so people have turned out, literally this weekend, Carl, 600,000 Israelis turned out to protest. And that's been building over 3 months. That's 6.5% of our entire population. Let me stop there, because over the weekend, a series of other things happened. But that at least frames the puzzle of what in the world is going on, and why are people scared that democracy and their freedoms are about to be washed out to sea.
Yeah, we're going to take a break right here, but we want to come back because this whole concept of leveraged power in this judicial reform conversation, it's deeply troubling to those of us who love and care for Israel, and the way it's almost it feels like some of the leadership of Israel is being almost blackmailed into steps that are dangerous and causing such strife. But we're going to talk about that when we get back. So stay tuned. Our verse for the day today is found in the book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 12, verse 32. And from Issachar, men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do. Our prayer requests today are number one, to pray that Israel would be led by men and women who understand the times that they're in and would do what God would have them do. And second, to pray that those that work on behalf of the good news of Jesus Christ in Israel would not be threatened with laws passed against the gospel. Well, Joel, we're back, and I know that it's confusing sometimes for those of us in North America to look at the politics of Israel on almost any subject and wonder what's really going on there. I think one of our mutual friends, Kalev Myers, said it best when he said, we're Israelis. We have to disagree about something. But this is deeper than just sort of the run-of-the-mill political arguing. People have always said if you put 5 Israelis in a room, you get 7 opinions. But I would love to have you just talk about what this judicial reform effort has led to and really what it is exposing about the current state of democracy in Israel.
Yeah, it's a great point. So now that our listeners and viewers have got some context of why the believing community here, the followers of Jesus, are on high alert that this judicial reform plan has very dangerous implications for us personally, and that others are seeing it from their own angle, whatever angle that is. They're like, what's happening to them could happen to us. And okay, so what's happening? So a viewer or listener might say, well, Joel, you just said that Netanyahu stepped in and said, no, I'm not going to let these people from crazy situation where we're going to declare war on Christians. And imagine, think about that, Carl, how almost miraculous it is for a Jewish prime minister of the state of Israel to side with the believers that, yes, you're allowed to talk about the gospel and try to even persuade people to follow. And he did so against the ultra-Orthodox Jewish members of his own government. Like, that is a big deal. And in All Israel News, we've played a small but I think important role in helping alert people. And Netanyahu did the right thing, and we praised him. And I sent a personal note through one of his advisors thanking him. So you might be thinking, well, okay, so he'll do the right thing. That's what we are praying for with judicial reform. But here's where we are. So it used to be thousands of people on the street protesting 3 months ago. Now it's 600,000. Okay. Now, It's getting so bad that members of elite combat units in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are saying, we're not going to go fight for a country that isn't a democracy. If you guys pass this, I'm not showing up to serve in my combat unit. This is insane. Fighter pilots in our most elite fighter pilot squadrons are saying, I'm not going to fly. I'm not going to defend a country that isn't a democracy. No, I won't do it. This has gotten so bad. Now, normally, politics should stay out of the army, right? You don't want a politicized military. But people are so scared that even the best and the brightest in Israel, the people that are on our front lines, are like, this is insane. You can't. I even if I support judicial reform, not with that, where all our rights could be taken away in an instant. So the defense minister was getting so worried about this that he privately, for several weeks, he's been saying to Netanyahu, we've got a problem. Like, you've got to dial down the temperature on this thing because the streets are full. Our combat units are starting to disintegrate. As we go into the Passover break, where the Knesset, the parliament, goes out of session for about 3 weeks, we're about a week away. Prime Minister, could you just say we're going to halt the movement of the legislation for this week, and then that'll turn into a month, just to dial down the temperature? And why don't you go and talk to the opposition leaders and just try to see if you can come to a compromise that everybody or most people can agree on so that this could pass, but not with setting the country into grave danger, including the possibility of civil war, where you would have people turning against, like you'd have a situation where if the Knesset passes this law and the Supreme Court strikes it down as illegal, and then the government passes a law saying we don't care, who's the army supposed to follow? That's a constitutional crisis, and we don't even have a constitution. Right. But that's a separate issue. Like, do you follow Netanyahu or do you follow the head of the Supreme Court? This is a major problem. So our defense minister, Yoav Gallant, was saying for weeks privately, Mr. Prime Minister, please, you have to dial this thing down, develop a compromise, because it's now affecting our combat readiness. And we might have to go to war with Iran, right? So what did Netanyahu do? He didn't listen to Gallant. He rejected that advice. And so on Saturday night, Gallant went on television and said, I am publicly calling on the prime minister to make these series of moves. He didn't say he opposed the legislation. He said, I'm asking the prime minister to hit the pause button effectively so that for all the reasons that, I just explained. What did Netanyahu do? Mm-hmm. He fired him. Netanyahu fired his own defense minister who was getting ready for war with Iran.
It's kind of reminiscent of the Nixon thing. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say Nixon, because Netanyahu's point, I mean, he didn't say this publicly, but his advisors are saying, in leaks to the press, a defense minister can't go on television when the prime minister is meeting with the British prime minister in London and go make a policy announcement. Yeah. That's not the job of a defense minister. So Netanyahu saw it as insubordination. But Gallant, who is a lifetime, military expert, he's a close ally of Netanyahu. He's not an enemy. He's an ally, just to reference my book. So Gallant thought, no, for the national interest, I have to say this to precipitate a decision, because I'm worried. It's not just, I'm not taking a political or a policy position. I'm saying the security of the country is in grave danger. Okay. So Saturday night, Gallant gives the speech. Sunday, Bibi returns from London and fires Gallant. Monday, the country goes crazy. Okay, what happens? All the schools close. They go on strike. No kids are in school. The universities shut down. The teachers go on strike. The people that work at Ben Gurion International Airport say, we're not coming to work, meaning no flights out, no flights in. The whole air traffic control system shuts down. The ports here, the commercial ports, where we're an export country, right? So we ship goods out, we ship them in. They completely shut down. The bank shut down. The national parks shut down. McDonald's tweets out, we're not opening our stores. Now, things got really serious if you can't buy a Big Mac, like now wow. But what I'm saying is this became huge. Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people turned into the streets. They blocked off major highways. You couldn't drive anywhere. The fires of this political and social divide were becoming so intense. And every leader of the opposition, of course, was saying, just pause this thing and let's have a conversation, or this fire is going to go out of control. The president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, warned of a civil war. And even 5 members of Netanyahu's own Likud party, right? Allies of his, but not Gallant, because he was already gone. 5 members of the party indicated to the press, we're not going to vote for this thing. So Netanyahu met with his government and said, now we now know, guys, I know we want to get this thing passed, but we've got to stop. And what happened? The ultra-Orthodox and highly aggressive Orthodox party called the Religious Zionism Party, led by 2 people that I consider very dangerous. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, which we've written about on All Israel News. And I don't say this lightly. I mean, they've been democratically elected, so they have every right to do whatever they say and push for their. They said, Bibi Netanyahu, if you stop this legislation, we're leaving. We're going to leave your government. Your government's going to collapse. And then what will you do about Iran and the economy and making peace with the Saudis? This was all yesterday. This was, as you and I record, this is all Monday. Okay. Now there's a leak to the media saying Netanyahu's going to make a public statement at 10:30 in the morning. 10:30 comes, 10:30 goes, no statement, no Netanyahu. Hours after hour after hour goes by, and the pressure is building, and more things are getting shut down. And we're like, what is happening? In All Israel News, we're covering it literally minute by minute, hour by hour. So what happened? Netanyahu finally came out onto television and said, I'm pausing the legislation. I call on my other, all the opposition leaders. We're going to gather together under the auspices of Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who for weeks had been saying, guys, come together. I'm willing to host you, and I will, And so Netanyahu said yes. So we immediately commended the prime minister at All Israel News, because we'd been explaining why this is so dangerous, and we supported the idea of a pause. Now, again, we're not a partisan organization, but just for the sake of the economy and the society, and knowing that if this train gets out of the station, it could have very severe implications for all Israelis, including for followers of Jesus. So that brings you up to speed, at least at the moment. I'm going to check the headlines while you ask me a question, just to see
it's moving
what
literally
else is
that fast.
My gosh. This is literally the most serious domestic crisis that Israel has ever had in the 75 years since the modern Jewish state was founded. Carl, I'm telling you, We've always worried about threats from the outside.
Exactly.
Now we are very worried about the battle within and the possibility of a civil war.
Yeah. Well, and, I know that one thing that you're really well known for is really reading the tea leaves. I wouldn't say that in a spiritual sense. You're just looking at things that are happening and you're making clear assessments of those things. So I think it's absolutely important for people to understand. You don't run around saying the sky is falling all day long like a number of Israel watchers do. That there's always something that this is the you're not that way. And for you to say that this is exactly the end is near. This is really important. And I think while we enjoy so many freedoms both in the United States and in Israel, the freedoms that we have come at a significant price for social and political responsibility to take seriously what's at stake here. And I think it's fundamental to North Americans understanding Israel that when you say this is a potential crisis on the level of a brewing civil war, we're not just running around with a placard saying the end is near. This is something for people to, even as they hear this podcast right now, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, of all Israel, of all what we hold dear in both spiritual terms and democratic terms in this country.
Right. And let me add, Carl, I can't even imagine a scenario in which I would say out of my own analytical perspective that we're on the verge of a civil war. What caught my attention was when the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, said it. Now the president in Israel is a nonpartisan position. I'm going to use an analogy. He's supposed to be like the grandfather of the country. He has very limited powers. There are some specific powers, but he represents the state, not the government, meaning there are interests that are broader than a specific government. And part of that is to bring sides together and sort of try to, help national wounds heal when political tensions are growing, or to travel abroad and speak to world leaders and to Jewish communities, Christian communities about the challenges facing Israel, not from a policy perspective that the prime minister would, but from the broader national interest of the state. Okay. Now, Isaac Herzog comes from like Israeli nobility. Like his family, if you go back a couple generations, were founding fathers and mothers of the country. I think his grandfather was the first chief rabbi of the country. One of his relatives was the first president or the second president of the country. And he himself was a major leader in the Knesset for many years. Highly respected, and honestly, about the quietest, calmest, least hyperbolic political leader that I have ever met. He's almost boring in his weaker moments. He's very interesting and he's very trusted, right? But I'm just saying, when he speaks, it's not dramatic and it's often important, but he doesn't say it he's not hysterical. He's not emotional. It's like flatline. When he said recently that the prospect of entering the abyss of civil war is not that far away, that caught my attention. It caught all Israelis, whatever your political persuasion. If Isaac Herzog is fearing that we're going into civil war, you'd better pay attention, because he's not kidding. And he has no political benefit or motive to stir up the pot. It's not part of his character. And it's his job to dial temperatures down and bring unity. So I think that's important for believers to hear, that we're not, the Josh Fund, we're not just, well, this is bad. And I have some political perspective in this. Look, I do have political perspectives. I just told you from a policy perspective, I think 61 seats, meaning a simple majority, like 50-50 plus one, that's insane. You can't have a system where the Supreme Court can't say, no, I'm sorry. The majority does not get to tell you whether you get to have free speech, freedom of religion, whatever. Not for a Muslim, not for a Jew, not for a Christian. You have to have a break. That's what a check and balance is in a democracy. So I'll tell you flat out. Now, I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not going out there to tell people, vote for this bill, don't vote. I'm just telling you it's dangerous. It's crazy. And a much higher number would make me happier. Okay. I'm just saying that. But it's important for most. And again, you mentioned North America, but as we even have listeners and viewers all over the world, some in democratic countries and some not in democratic countries. Look, Israel is a robust democracy. The fact that we're having this debate is itself robust democracy.
Sure. Sure.
But one of Netanyahu's close allies said just last week, he wants to put everybody in prison who's protesting. Again, that makes people nervous because when you say that, it means people start to believe you, right? They think if you had all the power, you could shut us up and put us in prison. Another top official, our finance minister from the religious Zionism party, Bezalel Smotrich, he said recently, just last week, that a town where there was a Jewish attack by Jewish settlers against Palestinians in this town, and that Palestinians fought back and some Jews were killed and Palestinians were killed. Smotrich said that town should be wiped off the map, destroyed.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he meant what? I mean, he's not a talk show host. He's the finance minister. He's one of the senior cabinet members in a government that wants to take the country close to ending democracy. The combination of these things is what have people nervous. Now, the adult in the room remains Netanyahu. It's taken a lot of pressure, but he has stepped up. Now, what happens in the next few weeks, I can't tell you. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm praying for him. He stood up for the believers last week. He pushed back against religious Zionist party, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and the others, to say, no, we are going to take a pause. I'm listening to the people. And he literally said, Netanyahu said in his speech, I am not going to lead the country into civil war. He is using this language also. So I want to make that clear to our audience that there's a gentleman named Benny Gantz. He's our former defense minister. Currently, he's in the opposition. But I wrote a column for All Israel News. Keep your eye on him. His numbers are rising. He's a former defense minister. He's the former head of the IDF. He's warning about civil war, but he's the one that stepped forward and said, I am willing to sit down with Netanyahu and try to figure this out. So there are some mature voices saying they will do it. Will they? I can't tell you as you and I record this. I don't know. But it's a fast-moving story, and we really need to pray because we should be focusing on our outside enemies, but we're in danger of creating enemies within.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to wrap here because this is a developing story. And who knows, if we release this podcast in a few days, things may change again. And there may be more data to imply here. But the reality is to remember, too, that we need to pray for Israel. We need to keep praying for Israel. And remember to pray for defense because the enemies of Israel are also looking at this. They're also seeing this. And is this a time for them to create more chaos? You mentioned in a prior conversation about how this is already a highly charged month with Passover, with Easter and Ramadan all taking place at the same time. It's just that kind of moment where all of these things are coming together. We like to say the epicenter, but at times it really does just shock you how of an epicenter this really is, spiritually and religiously and politically.
I will add one thing, and I know we've got to close, Carl, and I want to respect that amount of time, but let's just say one more thing. To all the people that are watching, listening, I still want you, and Carl still wants you to register to come to Israel in November on our Joshua 1 tour. Why? You're like, better. Joel, you're out of your mind. You seem like a nice young person, but God bless you. Why would I go there? Because first of all, I don't think this issue is going to continue by then.
Sure.
Secondly, we'll keep you up to date along the way. Third, we always have something. There's always something that's a risk.
Exactly.
But just like it's important to stand with Israel, it's amazing and a blessing to Israel to come stand in Israel, to come step into the story and come and pray. Look, there's travel insurance that's built into the package price, and you could get your own additional insurance rider if you need to. So that if there's a problem that we say it's not safe to come or the airports are really closed, then you'll get your money back. But I'm telling you, every time we have a tour, people always think, well, Joel, you keep writing in your books about worst case scenarios, and you tell us on your blog or All Israel News about threats and risks. Not because you're a fear monger, but because you're just telling us the truth. Yes, I'm telling you the truth, and I will continue to tell you the truth. And if you really shouldn't come here, Carl and I will tell you the truth, and we'll tell you we can't do this trip. We're going to have to postpone it. We'll tell you that. But I'm telling you, that's 8 months away. And I'm telling you, I'm as certain as you can be that you should sign up while we still have space, because it's going to be an amazing trip and you'll be part of praying for this country. So I still want you to come. So does Lynn.
Well,
so does
well,
Paul.
yes, and me too. You know, you live there. Lynn lives there. Your son Noah still lives with you there. Jonah and his wife Cassandra live there. Plenty of Rosenbergs are right there in Israel. And I'm getting on a plane on Thursday to join you for a few days. And
exactly, you're not afraid to come over here.
Not afraid. We would let you know. We would let you know. But here's the thing, and I think all of our listeners can certainly relate to this. That the work of the Joshua Fund, the place that we call the home of our ministry, the epicenter, is always going to be a place where things are happening. We wouldn't really be answering God's call in our lives if we were working in a place where nothing was happening. This is where and why I know many of you as our listeners, you want to be here, either physically or emotionally or spiritually in prayer. You want to be right where we are and where we're working at the epicenter. And that's why these podcasts and these stories from Near East Media and all the things that we're doing to try and help educate you as our listeners are so important. And if you do want to learn more about the Joshua Fund, you can visit our website, as Joel said, joshuafund.com. And you can learn about what we're doing in the Middle East, this epicenter, to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus, and how you can participate in the healing work we're doing in this critical region. You can also sign up, as Joel said, for our tour this fall with the Joshua Fund. I know you will be blessed in doing that. And as always, you can check out our show notes for anything you've heard on this podcast that you'd like more information on. For Joel Rosenberg and the Joshua Fund team, I'm Carl Moeller. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Inside the Epicenter.
Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg, founder and chairman of the Joshua Fund, and I've got exciting news. In 2023, I'm inviting you, on behalf of our entire board and staff, to come to the Holy Land, to come to Israel on the next Prayer and Vision Tour. This is the 75th anniversary of the prophetic rebirth of the modern state of Israel back in 1948. And what is God doing here? It's amazing, spiritually, economically, in so many ways. There's been so much growth, so much progress, but the best is yet to come. And we want you to see it. We want you to walk where Jesus walked. We want you to see where the apostles ministered. We want you to see where people's lives were transformed by the love of God and the power of the Holy Spirit. We want you to see this city where Jesus died and rose again, and where he's coming back, I hope soon. But in the meantime, come to Israel with the Joshua Fund. You can learn more about the trip, the itinerary, the cost, all the details at joshuafund.com. But sign up quickly, because I think this thing is going to fill up fast. The Prayer and Vision Tour of Israel in the fall of 2023. I hope to see you there. I'm Joel Rosenberg. On your left, you'll find some videos we've chosen specifically for you. We look forward to partnering with you to bless Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus.